Welcome to the Football Guys Dynasty Show. It's me, your favorite professional nerd, Jagger May. And then with me, as always, is our Dynasty captain, Jeff Bell. And we have a special guest. He's over from our regular fantasy show. It is Alfredo Brown. They're taking a break because the redraft season is over. And hopefully you guys didn't shut down trades, or they are about to unlock. And now everyone wants to foist off their garbage onto the trade block. So we're going to tell you what's trash and what's good. And we're going to start with the good right now. We have 9 off-season buys. We're going to jump right into it. Alfredo, you gave us our first one, Marvin Harrison Jr. Everyone's disappointed. He's not Lisan Al-Gaib. He's not the one who's promised.
No, I mean, first of all, I want to address that regular show comment that we just do regular fantasy football. I mean, at least call us redraft. Like, you make us sound even blander than we are, like two white guys that look very similar. Give it some spice, like make it a little bit better. But yeah, the first player I'm going with here is Marvin Harrison Jr. And it's just sometimes like we actually just have to sit back, step away from the spreadsheet, step away from the film for a little bit, and honestly just sit here and use common sense. We have a guy who pretty much everyone dubbed as a generational talent, a blue chip player. He gets into the league and he doesn't blow the doors off, and we're ready to panic. So much so that his head coach, his quarterback, everyone around him is being asked about this disappointment of a season when really, one, he just had himself a nice game, and two, we still have one more game left and he's probably going to be close to 1,000 yards. And I'm old enough, Jeff, sorry, I know you're a little bit older than me, but I'm old enough to remember a time where a rookie wide receiver getting 1,000 yards in their first year was actually quite good. And by the laws of dynasty physics here, this should be about the lowest that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be in terms of value. I love the ability to buy for him now. Another offseason of working with Kyler Murray is going to be big for him, getting the timing down right and not having to do all the dumb rookie stuff that goes along with being a first-year player in the league. He's going to be in their whole physical training regimen and everything. So I'm willing to buy in on Marvin Harrison Jr. this offseason.
You guys know me, and one of the things that I love to do is take the obscure stats and kind of drill down and make smaller lists off of those. And so one of my favorite things to do with rookies is to see where players stack up with rookies from the same franchise, because that's really eye-opening. I know last year there was a lot of talk about disappointing seasons from Jackson Smith and Jigba or Josh Downs. Meanwhile, they're setting Colts and Seahawks franchise rookie records with the numbers that they were putting up. For a while, Marvin Harrison Jr.'s company has been Anquan Bolden as one of the most productive rookies ever, and Larry Fitzgerald. And that's it in terms of rookie wide receivers for the Cardinals that have done the things that he's done. I understand when you're looking at Brock Bowers going out there and breaking records for the tight end position, Malik Neighbors breaking records at the wide receiver position. And I think you can even make the argument, and I think that our good friend Matt Waldman and some other people made the argument even before the draft that Neighbors had a game that lined up a little bit better with fantasy football because of the different areas that the Giants were able to get him the ball to increase the volume that he's able to see. One of the things with Marvin Harrison Jr., you watch the college film, and what stood out to me was how many times there were plays that it just looked like an incompletion because you're seeing it so many times. You watch a lot of football, that's an incomplete pass. Meanwhile, he got his toe in, somehow he bent his leg or things like that, was able to make the catch. And I think he's had multiple plays like that at the NFL level where it just needs to be that second toe as well. And it's just learning with the body control. And I think that's kind of taken a little bit off his plate from where he could be and probably potentially at 1,000 yards already, is just figuring out that little bit of extra body control because he is able to do things that rare athletes are able to do. I think it's crazy to call him a disappointment. But at the same time, I think it was crazy when people were drafting him in the first round of redraft. That was just, you were just placing unrealistic expectations on a player that, I mean, to be honest, is not the number one target in his offense right now.
Should have cut you off because you ruined my joke. I was going to be like, but Jeff, I drafted him second round. You know, Kyler Murray, have you seen when Call of Duty happens? When Call of Duty happens, Kyler Murray's bad. He's a mixture of Zach Wilson and any other bust known to mankind. He's the worst quarterback ever. It has nothing to do with sometimes he's the sacrificial X wide receiver, and then your draft scouts told you that he was an X and not Malik Neighbor. It doesn't matter, Jeff. It doesn't matter. Yeah, guys, buy him. I'm obviously joking. On Keep Trade Cut, some of the people around him, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith-Njigba straight up. It's not even a question for multiple reasons. Spoilers, I have JSN as a sell. So I am with you, Alfredo. I think I agree. Right now, an early first would get you Marvin Harrison Jr. That is the real trade right here. If you could trade a top 4 pick for Marvin Harrison Jr., go do it right now.
Yeah. I'm doing that immediately because, I mean, we'll be talking about this as well at some point, but looking at the talent in this class, what if it's pick 4, pick 5, even pick 3? Like, I'm doing all of those for Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think there's a player in this upcoming class that I'd rather have over Marvin Harrison Jr. on my Dynasty team.
Yep. I got the 104 right now in a league. And I'm like, you know what? Do I want Tet McMillan on maybe the Panthers? Or what if the Browns get him? You know, what if Drake May actually sucks and the Patriots never get any better?
Put Marvin Harrison Jr. where your mouth is, Jagger.
Yeah,
Wait.
Exactly. Before we go any further, that's a good time to pay some bills. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Also, we just wrapped up our listener leagues, and we had some winners, and their names are complicated and aren't great for shows because it's sleeper. So good job, guys. I know you guys are listening. We love you. And we will have them on a podcast where we will do a mock draft. There will be 3 of them on here. And they also won a free sub. If you would like a sub as well, on the listener end, leave us a comment or a review, 5 stars. Tell us how much you love Alfredo. Tell us how much you love Jeff. Maybe one of them will replace me. I don't know. Maybe they're the better combo. We're always trying new things here. And go over to footballguys.com/plans. We have our rookie guide coming out. Get signed up. Do all the stuff. Tell them Jagger and Jeff sent you. It really helps keep Jeff's kids fed. All right. We have one more. Actually, no, we have 8 more. Jeff, we have your first one. It's a quarterback. Shocker, he's a rookie. So tell us why we shouldn't think that Caleb Williams is a bust. I know that I've already seen it on the Twitter webs.
Because he's not a bust. I mean, he looks good. It's I don't know. I guess I feel like I'm watching a different player than what other people are seeing, and I think his offensive line is bad. His offensive line is not good, and his offensive line is not putting him in a position to succeed. He's already gone through 2 different offensive coordinators in
2 head coaches.
his first 2 head coaches in his first season. So that's not great. But this next hire is going to be key, I think, for what the Bears are able to do. I mean, there's been talk about Ben Johnson. If they can lock Ben Johnson in, that would be one thing. If there's Ron Rivera or something like that that has recently bubbled up, I mean, Bears going to Bears, I guess. But from what I've seen from Caleb Williams, I think there's the danger in stats. And I think that he's holding the ball right now. He's taking sacks to not throw the ball into coverage and to create interceptions. And so on one end of that created the great run where he didn't throw an interception for however many games. And we were tracking that passing total for no interceptions there because he was getting sacks. And he will figure that out. He's figuring out how to play within himself. He's figuring out different voices in his ear, whatever it might be, different schemes that he's working through, trying to figure that out. Right now, the Bears have 3 receivers over 700 yards. And this is the second time in their franchise history that they've had 3 receivers over 700 yards. And then when you start to look it up, the Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer. Caleb Williams at 3,300 yards could be closer to 3,600 or so when the season wraps up. And this is a disappointment season that people are ready to write off. I see him at quarterback 11 on Keep Trade Cut when I checked earlier today. And that kind of floored me a little bit, that would that valuation be that low. I don't know. I'm much higher than him. I'm happily buying him. I think the talent is there. I think the support system is there. I think if they nail down this offensive line, figure out this coaching, whatever it ends up being, I think that he is going to succeed. I think he can make every throw. He is an excellent player. And I think maybe our reactions are a little bit too severe, which is why I'm telling you to go out and buy these guys that look pretty good, to be honest, that are just not exactly lighting the league on fire like expectations set up.
But I drafted Caleb Williams in the Odunze stack, and I didn't win Best Ball Mania. It's it's terrible. It's terrible, Jeff. Alfredo, what do you think? Do you think QB 11 for Dynasty is a bit low?
Yeah, I do think it's a bit low. And it's also, we go like with Dynasty all the time. It's the eye of the beholder thing. It's how you value these players. So if I think at quarterback, especially, you can value a young quarterback because they're going to be around for a long, long time, potentially. It's so interesting. We take a step back from fantasy and Dynasty in general. And the 10,000 foot view is I was with some friends this weekend and all of them talking about how Caleb Williams is such a fat bust and he's such a bad pick, and that every other quarterback in this class looks so good except Caleb. It's not just a fantasy thing. It's not just a Dynasty thing. It's not even just a Chicago Bears fans thing. It is everyone. Everyone truly feels like Caleb Williams has been a bust. And Jeff, you talk about that streak where he goes on, where he's throwing nothing but touchdowns, no interceptions, and yeah, he's taking sacks. Caleb is still trying to extend plays when they don't need to be extended. He's still trying to play hero ball. We knew this from day one.
Day one.
We knew this from day one. It doesn't help that the offensive line is worse than expected. It doesn't help that he's had now multiple offensive coordinators. It doesn't help that the Bears are constantly in turmoil. And then what we're doing is a lot of this is projecting the wins are a quarterback stat because the Bears keep losing. And so I promise you, had he put up those same numbers and the Bears win those 5 games, all of a sudden we're talking about how Caleb Williams should be in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year. His dynasty value is about 5 or 6 spots higher, where oddly enough, Drake May is around a lot of people right now. I know a lot of like rushing stuff, but still, yeah, I think everyone's way too low on Caleb Williams right now.
That was going to be my next question here because, again, Drake May is 2 spots ahead of Caleb Williams overall. Devon Achane, Drake May, but Drake May's the QB 10, Caleb Williams QB 11, Bo Nix QB 12. So realistically, I mean, would you turn Drake May into Caleb Williams, or would you think that this is a bird in the hand, or would you try to turn Bo Nix into Caleb Williams there, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, if I can get turn Drake May, which would have been crazy to even think about it 6 months ago, but if you can get Drake May, if you can get Caleb Williams plus for Drake May, or if it's minor to go from Bo Nix to Caleb Williams, yes, you do that. That's how you play Dynasty. Again, I just don't see anything that is red flag for me on Caleb Williams. I know that there have been some charts that have been shared, but I think that if you looked at any player, if you picked out their 2 worst stats and you create a chart, they're going to be really low on that relative to where other players are. But at the same time, I'm sure you can go through Caleb Williams' profile, pick 2 things that he's doing well, create a chart off of that. Caleb Williams is going to look pretty good in that chart.
Jeff, man,
Jeff Bell, fantasy whistleblower.
Dude, the charts are sending me because one of the people in my friend group was like, Caleb Williams has the highest sack rate amongst the quarterbacks that have been in rookies, and none of them end up being successful. All right, cool. Like I can just throw out charts and stats too, guys. Like let's just watch the games. Let's just watch them.
I've rarely found a useful chart. Guys, if data is your thing, I get it. Because I've heard some people say, I don't understand football at your level, so I need something to look at. And I understand that. So I will say it's someone you trust who's right a little bit often than not. And like, I get the whole sack and hero ball thing. That happens when your quarterback has trust. That means he trusts the plays. He trusts his wide receivers. Right now, who can trust the Bears play calling? The Bears don't even trust their own play calling. That's why they do it poorly sometimes. That's why they let clocks expire and lose games, because they're not even confident in themselves. It is a disaster. So let's not be silly. The only pushback I have against you guys, I would turn Bo Nix into Caleb Williams, and maybe I'm being a homer here. Actually, no, it'd be hard for me. Does the rushing do anything for you guys? Because, like, using my process, Caleb Williams kind of should be third, but not as third as some people say. Arguably, someone who I think is a buy, who we're about to talk about, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, these guys should be after these rookies. It's less about where the rookies are and more where that whole cluster of rookies is at. Because CJ Stroud, I still think he's a buy. So let's put this aside. He doesn't run the ball, guys.
Right.
It's just math. So that being said, I think that's a good transition. We all like Caleb Williams, so I'm going to talk good about CJ Stroud. He's a good quarterback, guys. You ever heard all the things we said about Caleb Williams? He has a bad offensive line and he can't run. Caleb can at least run away. And who is the Jets, or excuse me, who are the Texans wide receiver 2 right now? It's nobody right now. It's John Mechie. Stephon Diggs is fuming on the sideline, probably causing drama in a group chat somewhere. I'm surprised he doesn't have subliminal posts going on Twitter right now. They don't have a wide receiver 2. Dalton Schultz isn't enough. Bobby Slowick, I don't know what's going on there. There's some questions there, but it's really the offensive line. If there's any time for you to pick up a player that probably has potential, it's CJ Stroud. According to Keep Trade Cut, I'm crazy. Alfredo, we'll start with you. Where are you at with CJ Stroud? We call him Schrodinger's players. He looks like a sell and a buy at the same time, depending on what lens you have.
Yeah, I'll say I'm fine with CJ Stroud. I think that he's been dropped, I think, to a much more appropriate level. I do think that it's weird. So I've got CJ Stroud like around that quarterback 7-8 range, and I think that he is clustered with Caleb Williams, like you said, and Drake May and some of these other guys. And it's just kind of, it's picking your flavor of ice cream, man. It's like, do you want to have quarterbacks that are going to be rushing the ball and give you that upside, or at least that rushing floor like a Drake May does? But he's going to be whipping the ball around all over the place, probably getting some interceptions, playing a little crazy. You want to go for something that if you accept the variance, right? Like my co-host Dave Kluge always talks about accepting variance in fantasy football. If you're willing to do that, great. If you just want a simple quarterback 2, or quarterback 1, especially for Stroud, that you can just plug in every week and get your, 15 to 20 fantasy points every single week. Yeah, that's exactly what you're going to get. I think that this is where he should be. I think he was getting a little blown out of proportion last year when he was around quarterback 3 in Dynasty rankings. And I think this is actually pretty appropriate. So Jagger, if there is someone in leagues that is valuing him, closer to quarterback 10, 11, below a Jordan Love, below, if he's kind of hovering on that Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy territory, which sounds crazy. Yeah, I'm buying all the way, but I think he's actually appropriately valued.
Jeff?
He's my quarterback 10. And I think that some of it, that's down from where I had him. We talked about with Marvin Harrison Jr., unrealistic expectations. And I think that CJ Stroud had unrealistic expectations from a fantasy standpoint coming into this year because his profile doesn't match up to good fantasy numbers relative to a player like a Jalen Hurts that's just getting pushed into the end zone 15 times a year. That is that cheat code that we know that rushing can be for a quarterback. CJ Stroud doesn't have that. And so you're looking at kind of like a fancy souped up version of Kirk Cousins ish. And so you're kind of looking at that quarterback 10 ish range when you get into it with fantasy, a Jared Goff type, those types of players that, yeah, they can get to 4,000 passing yards. They can get to even flirting with 40 touchdown passes. We're seeing Baker Mayfield flirting with 40 touchdown passes this year. And so that's in their range of outcomes. But at the same time, they're never going to have that Lamar Jackson year where he's throwing for 4,000 yards, rushing for 1,000 yards, and doing all those types of things. And really, the way I look at it in my mind, the way that it breaks down is think around like 20 to 22 fantasy points per game. And with CJ Stroud, like you're dealing with one of those ceiling guys of a season will be about 20 to 22 fantasy points per game. With a Jaden Daniels, with Josh Allen, the ceiling for those guys is about 28 to 29 fantasy points per game. And that 6 points can make a big difference. And so I think coming into it, you saw the strong rookie season, you saw the excitement around that, and people naturally put CJ Stroud very, very high. I was one of them. I had CJ Stroud pretty high, but in the back of my mind, I was saying, well, this is a 20 to 22 point per game player. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt with his youth. Unfortunately, youth kind of goes the other way as well. If you look back at his season, he started out pretty strong, relatively strong compared to where he's kind of been running until Nico Collins went down in that Buffalo game. And he was at 345. And granted, it was against Jacksonville, 345 passing yards in week 4, 331 against Buffalo. Nico Collins goes down to Buffalo, and all of a sudden it's 192, 86, 285, 191. It falls out. And so you didn't have that vertical attacking threat from Nico Collins that was keeping the safeties honest, that was allowing windows for him to throw into. You lose Stephon Diggs as well. Then it kind of looked like he was maybe turning it around. He looked decent against Kansas City. He was looking good with Tank Dell, and then you saw that injury to Tank Dell, and now he loses Tank Dell. And so you see this game against Baltimore. Baltimore is just teeing off against the pass, against that offensive line, just like you mentioned, Jag. They're able to man up with Marlon Humphrey on Nico Collins, and you got John Mechie drawing 8 targets because they just don't have anybody else. They really need Theo Johnson to step in and to be a wide receiver 2 for them. They have nothing to play for this week. They need to get him acclimated in there to have any chance to beat probably Pittsburgh in round 1, potentially the Chargers in round 1 to win that game. They need Theo Johnson because Baltimore laid the blueprint on how to beat them. Shut down Nico Collins. They've got nothing else. And Joe Mixon, the bottom has fallen out there as well. And so you hesitate to say that he needs more help when he's already got a Nico Collins and when he's got all these pieces. But when everybody's hurt, what are you throwing to?
Yep. I mean, you pretty much said that. That's my entire point there is the big mistake there. And I'll apologize to anyone there. I had CJ Stroud ahead of Patrick Mahomes in Dynasty. And I think my process, to be honest, is right and wrong. Patrick Mahomes was not very good most of the season here. You can't say that he was the reason that you made the playoffs. He could be the reason that you're winning at this point, the playoffs. But we didn't think and remember why the Texans had to pick so highly. They're only one draft removed from CJ Stroud. They have no talent on that roster. And like you said, once the talent they brought in was injured, they're back to being depleted again. So that's why I'm willing to make that bet again and know that, 1 or 2 drafts they'll have a little bit more talent on that roster. We're going to move on to Alfredo.
I love that point. I love that point you make about the Texans drafting high, because really when you break it down, they won that game week 18 against the Colts last year to go to the playoffs. And then they beat the Browns really because Joe Flacco was just throwing picks left and right. And that's how they beat the Browns. And so all of a sudden you got CJ Stroud in round 2 off a hot rookie season, and you're really buying in. If that goes the other way and the Colts win that, the offseason I think is very different for CJ Stroud relative to expectations, relative to all that, where we're saying, hey, that was a great fun season by the Texans, but they need to build a little bit more, versus us thinking, well, they're already there now they're going to ascend to the top of the AFC.
Yeah, he didn't get the Caleb Williams treatment regardless of how that's looked out. And a wide receiver, Alfredo, Ricky Pearsall, we've been on him for a while. Didn't have the season that we thought either, but he's pretty affordable.
Yeah, I mean, Ricky Pearsall was one of my guys coming into the NFL draft, and when I was so high on him, and then when he got drafted by the Niners in the first round, pants were off when we were doing the NFL draft live stream. It was crazy. I didn't expect that either. And then obviously he has the whole gunshot thing, and he misses so much time. He comes back in, and we're saying, okay, well, with Brandon Ayuk out, naturally he's going to be the guy that's going to come in and play more. Christian McCaffrey's hurt. He's going to come in. He's going to produce, right? Well, wrong. I mean, it doesn't always happen like that for rookies. What sucks is seeing it happen for basically every other rookie at the wide receiver spot and all the other quarterbacks as well. But I think that you're sensing a theme here where we're looking at some of these rookies that underperformed because people are so willing to give up on them so fast. And even rookies in the middle of the season, they're willing to give up on them, which is crazy. Like people in redraft fantasy that dropped Jalen McMillan and didn't stash him, and then all of a sudden he's having himself a great end of year, or people that sold on him early in Dynasty, they missed out on a guy who's having a great end of season here, and the value spikes. For the Niners, the vibes suck around them right now. My mom texted me the other day after the Dolphins beat the Niners. She's like, man, I thought the Dolphins sucked. The Niners are really bad. What happened to them? And I'm like, Mom, honestly, I can't even explain it. The vibes are just bad around the Niners right now. The injuries have been piling up. Brock Purdy's looking very, very human. There's the rumors that Kyle Shanahan might not even be there next year. Like, Debo is a shell of himself. I don't know that Debo stays on that team next year. Brandon Ayuk's coming off injury. This could be an opportunity for Ricky Pearsall going into the offseason where he gets a full offseason. I think people discount that too much, is that a player having a second offseason, a real offseason, not a rookie offseason, where they can come in, be on the same workout regimen, work with their quarterbacks, do a whole training camp. It's such a big deal. We're already seeing the play start to pick up a little bit. It's nothing crazy, but Ricky Pearsall is a guy that I do like investing in him because it's also not going to cost you a whole lot. I'm sure there are a lot of people buying him at like late first, early second round price tag. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people trading him right now for a late second. I don't want to say early third. That sounds a little too crazy, but probably a late second price tag. And I'm willing to pay that.
Yeah, especially if you need a wide receiver. It's not like Go ahead, Jeff.
Alfredo, you're pretty good at this. He's having quite a game here on Monday Night Football. He's got 4 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown was very acrobatic, and then he had another play downfield where he really just kind of burned a defender, made them stand still, and they had to wait on the ball a little bit, catch that. So he's having a pretty good Monday Night Football, but I think you make a great point there. I do expect Deebo Samuel. We've said it for a little while that I don't think he's going to be a 49er next year. Brandon Ayuk coming off that injury. I think Juwan Jennings is going to continue to be a key piece, but I think that it's easy to see Pearsall working into a high value role next year.
The 49ers with Deebo, they're that fantasy manager, the dynasty manager that held on to a player too long because they're in their championship window instead of going out and getting the value ahead of time. And that's where they're at. Deebo never should have been on this roster. As soon as they drafted Ricky Pearsall, essentially, of course, they should have let him go, paid Brandon Ayuk, and then you have one guy coming along. You had Juwan Jennings there, and then who knows? Brandon Ayuk would have been with the team early on. Because another thing that's happened with the 49ers, Brandon Ayuk wasn't on the team. That matters. A lot of people don't realize practicing matters. Stop being Allen Iverson. That only works in basketball and stuff like that. Football, you need to be on the field. They make a different play. They make a different playbook essentially every week, but the language and the communication is pretty much the same. When you don't have that, the learning curve week to week is difficult, and we really underrate that. So I think that is an easy buy. The next one is a Chief. Xavier Worthy, Jeff. He's really came on here lately. I have a bet with another guy in a random league because I've been trying to buy Garrett Wilson. I bet he'd give me Garrett Wilson now for Xavier Worthy. Now, before you begin, he's the wide receiver 30 on Keep Trade Cut. That seems a bit low. He's behind Jameson Williams, DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk. Seems like it's someone you should be getting at this point.
Yeah, JJ and Denny on Living the Stream is one of my favorite shows to listen to. They brought up a really good point about anchoring and what happens in fantasy football, where you have something that happens over half the season, and that really just gets stuck in people's minds, and it's almost like they black out the next half of the season. And especially when something happens in the first half of the season, they black out what happens in the second half of the season. The first half of the season, Xavier Worthy was a disappointment. He was not being actively involved in the Chiefs offense. They just kind of seemed like a little bit of a wasted draft pick. I mean, it started out as Rashee Rice as the key piece, and he probably would have been had he not gotten injured. But even after that, they still really weren't working Xavier Worthy in. If you walk back to when they lost to the Bills in, I think it was week 11 that they lost to the Bills. And since then, Xavier Worthy has been the focal point of their offense. They have been working, trying to get him the ball in different areas of the field. They've been creatively giving him the ball in space to allow him to run after the catch, involving him in the run game. We saw 11 targets in week 16, week 15. I think it was 8 or 9 targets in week 17. He's been wide receiver 10 during the fantasy playoffs over the last 3 weeks, wide receiver 10. And so that really, when you break it down, you look at the two halves of the season. That first half of the season, he was on pace for about 400 receiving yards. The second half of the season, he's on pace for 1,000 receiving yards. He's just been night and day a different player. I think they really looked at coming out of that Buffalo game and said, we need to involve him in our offense to beat a team like Buffalo. And they have made that really a focal point to develop that. Now you're bringing Hollywood Brown back in, and he immediately steps in, and he has been a contributor as well, working a little bit more downfield, and that just serves to open up Xavier Worthy underneath to create a little bit more. And I think that we have this profile in our minds for a player like Xavier Worthy, the deep speed, hit plays deep, and all of that. But when you're getting these short little intermediate touches and you're starting to rack up 11 targets in a game, that's when you're a fantasy football difference maker in PPR and half PPR. That's when you have really high upside. And that's the player that he's shown in the second half of the season.
Yep. Right now, Alfredo, Jaden Reed is wide receiver 26. Would you take? Would you sell Jaden Reed to get Worthy right now? Sounds like he will.
You are reading my mind because that is the exact player I was going to talk about. Where I'm like, dang, these guys are really close, and I actually have Xavier Worthy ahead of Jaden Reed, and looking at Keep Trade Cut as well right now. Jaden Reed is ahead of both Jameson Williams and Xavier Worthy, and I take both those guys over Jaden Reed. That Packers offense, I'm trying to unload as much as I can there. But yeah, Xavier Worthy, I mean, the arrow's pointing up, like Jeff said, and people compartmentalize different parts of the season. And if we get one more big game from Xavier Worthy here, that buy window might start to slam shut, especially going into whatever he does, but we always forget about this because it doesn't count for fantasy. But when we go to the NFL playoffs, everyone remembers those big games. And if he has a big game in the NFL playoffs, that's it, y'all. Like, it's done. That buy window is closed. That was yesterday's prices.
Yep. And those chart bros are going to come out in the offseason and be like, well, I crunched some numbers and then I realized that the things that I said at the
well, actually.
Yeah, exactly. They'll do that to themselves if you like pull their own tweet. Just buy them now before the price goes up, like Alfredo said. Like right now, like I'm looking at it, we actually have him listed as a sell. Terry McLaurin. I was like, okay, I'll do that all day, every day. I'm going to talk about this later. Why am I looking at JJ McCarthy on the second page of Keep Trade Cut, people? A lot of hope there. He seems incredibly gettable. I'm not saying JJ McCarthy sucks. Don't come at me, Vikings Twitter. I'm just saying you're expecting him to start next year, and I think that is false. We have another rookie. It's my rookie, Rome Odunze. Remember all that stuff that Jeff said and he's been saying, and all the stuff that we've all said about rookies ever this entire episode? It's all right here, guys. The Bears have had 3 700-yard wide receivers. They arguably could have just had 2,000-yard receivers if they didn't force Keenan Allen into the game plan every week. I think we're being silly. I think was it someone Jax Falcone compared Rome Odunze's season to previous wide receivers, and it's been fine. He's fine. If you like Caleb Williams, you should want his actual wide receiver one. DJ Moore is not it anymore. It seems like DJ Moore got that money and now he's good. Keenan Allen, he is a skinny tight end or a thick slot, whatever you want to call it. Is your slot wide
really
receiver?
Make sure you get that vowel right when you call him a thick slot.
Yeah, okay. Thick slot. So let's get that correct. I'm gonna add that to my pre-show vocal warm-ups.
Skinny tight end, thick slot.
Got it. Yeah. Jeff, I know you've been kind of talking about Rome Odunze being a buy all season long. I don't think that's going to change much going forward.
No. Rome Odunze is very, very high on my list. Again, Alfredo made a great point when you were talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. and expectations that have been reset relative to rookie wide receivers. 716 yards playing in an offense with DJ Moore, with Keenan Allen, with a rookie quarterback, with 2 different offensive coordinators. I mean, what are we doing here? Like it's I don't know. To me, I'm perfectly fine with 52 receptions, 700 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's, if it were like 300 yards, I would be freaking out a little bit. Or if he looks like he doesn't belong, and that's, again, another thing that you see him on the field. He looks like he belongs on an NFL field, and he looks like he can be a difference maker on an NFL field. Yeah. There were a lot of people that were very high on Jalen McMillan coming into this year. Jalen McMillan did nothing for 13 weeks, and he's gotten very hot over the last 4 weeks. We see this with rookies all the time. Rome Odunze just kind of isn't being allowed to get hot relative to where the Bears offense is running.
His quarterback paints his nails.
That's what I heard.
Odunze right now, wide receiver 18 on Keep Trade Cut. You could buy him for a 2025 mid-first. Fun fact, guys, if you need a wide receiver and you have a 2025 mid-first, go get Rome Odunze. The real question, I'm going to kick over to you, Alfredo. George Pickens, wide receiver 17. You would go get Odunze for George Pickens. Everyone's starting to see what I told everyone on film. Everyone thought I was crazy when I said George Pickens just gives up for plays. He just doesn't do stuff. all
Oh,
the
yeah.
time. And everyone's just like, you're crazy. He just doesn't play for Fields. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
No, but
Nah,
that's exactly who George Pickens is. Like since college, that's what he is. He's a
forever.
highlight reel. He's an incredible athlete. He can do some things that make you go, "Oh my God, he's the best receiver in the league." And then he does other things where you're like, he might not be in the league in 2 years. Like there's just things that he does, and like he's on the trajectory for a Steelers wide receiver at the moment. Like this, he's just on it. He is it. If you were gonna ask George Pickens or Rome Odunze, I'm doing Rome Odunze there.
Yep.
And like I'm urging people, had we not just seen another rookie wide receiver drafted as the third target on his team come out and have a phenomenal year in his second year after getting rid of the exact same offensive coordinator that Rome Odunze has. I'm talking about Jackson Smith-Njigba, by the way.
Yeah.
Like we're acting like we haven't seen this happen before. Odunze's had a good rookie season. Offensive coordinator, obviously a problem. Rookie quarterback doesn't help. Having a bunch of target competition doesn't help. Next year should be very, very different, and I'm willing to bet that it will be.
Yeah. And like you said about Jackson Smith-Njigba, he was a good prospect. Rome Odunze is and what was a better prospect than Jackson Smith-Njigba is. And he has a better quarterback. There's just so many reasons why you should be buying him. Especially another one that we told to sell, Jonathan Taylor. I would pay that every time for a wide receiver. And again, looking at these first right now, especially for wide receivers, if you're trying to fix a hole or you're in a league where making trades is a little bit difficult, so you really need to fix holes through the draft, go buy some of these other guys. Jeff, was it you? I think somebody, I saw a random tweet or something where someone had like quote tweeted someone that says like, man, if the Steelers would have drafted Brian Thomas Jr., they'd have a legitimate wide receiver too. And I'm like, yeah, George Pickens. I was like, George Pickens would be the wide receiver too.
It was not me, but I completely agree with you. But.
We got the last of Alfredo's buys. It is an incredibly athletic tight end from Penn State, Theo Johnson. Why don't you give us your sales pitch?
I mean, we know this about tight ends, right? Like it's kind of every time we get to NFL draft season and we're like, okay, tight ends, do the thing. We just want to see you run in the combine. We want to see how athletic you are. We want to see how high you jump, how fast you run, all the things you do, because that typically equates to fantasy production, right? All the guys with their spreadsheets are nodding their heads. Yes, you're right, Alfredo. But also Theo Johnson's like actually just pretty good at football as well. He's not as doofy and as uncoordinated as some of these highly athletic tight ends coming out might be. And we already started to see his role increase in this Giants offense. Now that's going to be the big detractor, and that's why you can get a young rookie like this at such a good price, because he is in the Giants offense. He did suffer an injury. But listen, whether the Giants end up with one of these rookie quarterbacks or they get someone in free agency or make a trade, Theo Johnson's likely to be one of their top targets on the team next year, unless they go out and do some sort of other crazy trades. I don't know if the Giants are going to have that much swag in the offseason. They're probably going to be looking to utilize some of these young players and start to try to build something. Right now, looking at keep trade cut Jagger, he's a tight end 24. That's going to cost you nothing. I'm going to go out and do that. Like, it's just a lottery ticket. I'll send you an early third for your Theo Johnson. I'll send you a late second in this draft for your Theo Johnson. Whatever. It's a lottery ticket. If it hits, awesome. If it doesn't, it's the exact same lottery ticket I had with my late second or early third in my rookie draft. So I'm going to do that every single time.
Yep. And I love that you said he's a tight end 24. Another point that I saw someone, I think it was actually Jordan McNamara, and I told him this. He's just like, if you have Kyle Pitts in your top 10 tight ends, I don't know what you're doing. I'm like, well, who are you really putting in like?
Dog,
like
Noah Gray is the tight end 22 on keep trade cut right now.
Yeah, it's like nothing matters that low. Like basically,
It's Fugazi.
Yeah, after tight end 12, it's unranked to me. So that's just free money at that point. So like if there's any freebie that you could buy, especially if you have multiple seconds or thirds, this is how you consolidate. Instead of putting all your basket into the draft, let's go get somebody who actually got drafted, had an incredibly athletic profile. And I know some data nerd's going to tell you, well, Theo Johnson didn't have production. Newsflash, buddy. I scout a lot of Penn State. None of their athletic guys have production. It's just like, remember Chop Robinson? He's doing okay over there at Miami. You know how many sacks he had? Like 2. all his career or something.
Hey, if you're willing to step on the Chigo Okonkwo rake again, just save your time and go and trade for a guy like Theo Johnson, please.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Chig happened again.
Chig happened. Nice.
Yeah, that's what you should do. That's the move. Go take Chig Okonkwo right now. Go get Theo Johnson and a third. You don't even need to spend your own third on Theo Johnson.
Yep.
Jeff, where are you at on him? He's free, so
he's free. I'm fine grabbing free things. To be honest, he's usually the type of player that I will use to bump up tiers to try to get maybe into the early second, or to like trade a fourth and Theo Johnson to get into that late second is usually kind of the way that I approach a player like him. I mean, long term, there's a lot of questions around the Giants. Who's going to be their quarterback? It's clearly going to be running through Malik Neighbors, probably right now, probably through Tyrone Tracy. So I don't know. I understand the athleticism and the appeal of Theo Johnson, and I completely agree with you at the price tag. It's worth taking that chance. And I especially like buying these guys that flashed, then were injured, and I'm not going to be concerned about their injury long term, because I think you get a discount when you do that. At the same time, I'm not super excited about Theo Johnson, like long term being like the number 2 weapon. And that's really what I'm looking for when I'm trying to build a dynasty roster. The number 2 target earner, the number 1 target earner, and the number 1 target earner is definitely going to be Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, that's really fair. The way I look at it, though, is the Giants are so bad in so many other areas that I don't expect them to put a lot of resources towards that many pass catchers like that. I fully expect them to run it back next season and be like, all right, Jalen Hyatt, let's give you a try one more time. And Theo Johnson, Malik Neighbors, all like the same crew coming back, Wandale. So yeah, that's kind of where my head is at, is they're maybe set at tight end with Theo and Bellinger as their second guy.
Yeah, if I'm the Giants, I'm paying up to go get Shedeur from the Patriots if they stay there. I know you guys don't think they will, but the Patriots just don't need a QB. So someone will offer them something, and then I'm drafting a QB, and then I'm going best available, which means I'm getting linebackers, defensive players, because that's the top of this draft. But that's a conversation for a different time. We're going to work our way to Jeff's last buy, Javonte Williams. I need you to convince me here, because he's one of those players I'm just done. I'm just done, Jeff. I don't care about him anymore. Make me care.
It's Javonte Williams, but it's really an archetype. And it's these running backs that are anywhere between running back 15 and running back 60 in Dynasty. And I think that the way that you should approach these running backs is treat it like redraft and treat it like you're throwing everything into a grab bag. Look at Rico Dowdle last year. You could have got Rico Dowdle for free. Even at this point of the season, you could have got Rico Dowdle for free.
I told you to sell him to me, Jeff.
What happens? Tony Pollard leaves in free agency, and suddenly Rico Dowdle is a starting running back in the NFL, and he's a 1,000-yard rusher. Javonte Williams is going to be a free agent. He's not going to be a Denver Bronco. They didn't want him there. They haven't wanted him in there all year, and now they basically just have him as a glorified pass blocking fullback. Is about all Javonte Williams is doing now for them. He's not really a great scheme fit. I think mentally he's checked out. He kind of lands in maybe where Josh Jacobs' territory was last year, where he knows he's not going to be there long term, kind of going through the motions. You've got the coach loves Audric Estime, the coach loves Jaleel McLaughlin, and Javonte Williams is not his guy, was there before. He's going to go out into free agency. And the reason why Javonte Williams is a buy is it can't get worse.
He's your Theo Johnson?
Basically, yes, but these backs in general, because if you would have done this 2 years ago and gone out and bought Kyren Williams after his rookie year when he didn't do anything, but you saw he's right there on the depth chart and it only takes one thing to break his way and all of a sudden he's Kyren Williams. In Dynasty in general, just keep buying these backs that are going to be in changing situations, that are one injury away, one move in free agency away. And you can, if you're able to do this and grab these guys at this time of the year, you can start to create a cycle where you're riding them to fantasy championships and then spinning them off, getting draft picks, getting the next ones you want to ride, doing all those types of things. And while we've talked so many times on this program about getting the elite quarterbacks, getting the high-end wide receivers, and then building your team that way, when you're able to do that, that's when you can create a juggernaut powerhouse in Dynasty.
Yeah, if I can get him super cheap in a package deal, I'll do it because he can land somewhere. I mean, I'm looking at and I'm trying to talk about my team. I just know their roster. The Patriots, Ramondre's a problem. Antonio Gibson. He's never been good. Everyone's just like, well, he's got an opportunity now. He's had every opportunity since day one, and he's been garbage. So I could see him falling to a spot. Moreover, Jeff, you and I have talked about this. Everyone's counting those eggs on those rookie running backs, and every day I'm doing the Billy Bob Thornton and pulling them off the board and dropping them in the box. For anyone who's seen Friday Night Lights, if you're watching this show, you've probably seen that movie. So that's what I'm doing. Like Jaden Ott just went out there, so I could see Javonte getting an easy contract and having a Rico Dowdle season. And if you're a competitive guy, you have someone who I think is better than Rico Dowdle. I know, like I joked about, I don't think Rico Dowdle's that good. Javonte's tape has always been a good player. It's been health for him. So he's the type of player that makes me not understand Sean Payton, and I don't get what he's doing, and I don't think he knows what he's doing. That's why I faded Bo Nix, because he's just like, I don't like this player. I like Audric Estime and these tiny little boys, and I'm just like these little small boys, like,
Rewind though, replay the season in your head on Thursday Night Football against the Saints. Javonte Williams had a really, really good game. And then Sean Payton immediately the next week was like, yeah, we're going to reevaluate our run game and we're going to figure out what we're doing here. And it was like, then they brought in Marvin Mims and Audric Estime was playing all of a sudden. And think about what that does to a player like Javonte Williams, where you just went out.
Confidence.
Yeah. The emotion tied into Sean Payton going back to New Orleans. You just laid it out and you had your best game of the season. And immediately the coach a week or 2 weeks later says, yeah, we're going to evaluate how we're handling the run game. And you're just done. At that point, you can go to that exact point when Sean Payton's press conference came out saying that they were going to look at the run game and look at Javonte Williams' production, and it fell off a cliff at that moment. He mentally checked out. He was looking for the next opportunity, and I think you can get a great value there.
Yeah, that's crazy. You've actually sold me, Jeff. You did it. You did as I asked. Alfredo, you buying some?
Actually,
Javonte?
just traded for Javonte Williams too in a
What'd
league.
You do? Tell the crowd.
So it was a league that we have this local Ohio league with Ohio content creators, people like Ian Harditz, our friend Christian Williams. There's the Rich and
I know
Dynasty
Price.
Nerds. Yeah, Garrett and Rich
Jared
are in there,
Wackley.
and Jared's not in the league, but yeah, he's a friend. But Bob Long has been to the championship game 3 years in a row and lost the first 2 years. And he had CeeDee Lamb, he had Ken Walker, and he was basically bumming like this past week. And so I flipped. I had Charbonnet, I had Jonnu Smith, and I had Brandon Cooks. And I traded them to Bob for Jalen Waddle, Javonte Williams, and a 3rd round pick. So that's the deal that I did.
Yeah, I would do that in a heartbeat. I'm gonna go to our last one because we've never had a show go this long in like weeks because we have Alfredo here.
Sorry.
I guess. So we actually
9 players. You're asking a lot.
Yeah, 9 players is a lot. We don't normally cover this many. And we're out of practice, guys. We took a week off. I forgot football was even a thing.
Jeff, when you said the Ricky Pearsall thing, I was like, oh my God, there's Monday Night Football right now.
Yeah, dude. Like I totally forgot. It took Sleeper
we're gonna be
tell
in Vegas
me.
soon. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Like us, like a peek behind the curtain, guys. We always talk about us talking about that too much. Us fantasy guys, we're really looking for that vacation next week. So we are on senior-itis. But Sam Darnold, I want to talk about him. Jeff, we've been talking about this since day one. I was like, everyone just keeps thinking like, well, JJ McCarthy or it's Sam Darnold. Everyone keeps like, that's their excuse. It's like, well, it's Sam Darnold. I'm like, dude, they're splashing champagne on him. I'm pretty sure he's going to be like the godfather of Kevin O'Connell's kid if he keeps it up. If he's not going to stay with the Vikings, someone else is going to pay for him. So here's your play here. Either he stays at the Vikings, awesome, sweet. You have Sam Darnold of this year. Or he's going to go to another team, awesome, sweet. His price is still going to go up because someone said, well, they paid him. And now I know he has a contract and you could sell him. Here is why I think he's going to stay. We've talked about this common theme, especially with rookies. J.J. McCarthy has not had a real offseason. He's not had a real season. People's like, well, he sat and developed. He was barely even holding a clipboard because he's in recovery or doing other things yet. So he hasn't had his redshirt season. He had like a redshirt week, and then it was game over. So I am betting that Sam Darnold is going to be the starter at least for another year. Tell me I'm crazy, Alfredo.
You know what? I think prior to the show, now that I've had 50 minutes to think about it since our pre-show talk, I don't think you're crazy. I don't think you're crazy at all. And I think that Sam Darnold could be sort of the Ben Johnson of starting quarterbacks in the NFL, where he's had this success. And he might go and test free agency. And he might do that. And he might see, okay, the Raiders want to pay me, or some other team that can't get up to get a quarterback is going to want me. The Giants. Could you imagine Sam Darnold back in New York, but on the Giants? That would be hilarious.
I wouldn't hate that. I think Brian Daboll might be an okay coach. I think Daboll's fine. Joe Shane is the problem.
It's just the concept of him being back in New York, I think, is honestly hysterical. Like, I think they could offer him to be the highest paid quarterback in the league, and he wouldn't go back to New York.
No,
just because of that city.
See them ghosts.
No, yeah, like, but I think that what he might do, and I think it's very realistic, is be the highest paid, let's call it backup, or one of the lower paid starters in the league, and remain being the starter for Minnesota for as long as he needs to, and keep putting more good games on film, keep making good money. Don't look like the bust that everyone thought you were for years and years and years. And if the Vikings can win on top of that, cool, you're Baker Mayfield. Like, there's no guarantee that these rookie quarterbacks need to jump in and start right away, especially a guy like J.J. McCarthy, who just never had a lot of starts under his belt anyways.
Yep. And I think you nailed it right there. I think these players, they know better than us. They're starting to learn. I'm looking at Daniel Jones, another New York quarterback you talk about. He had the opportunity to go be a starter somewhere else. Like, I'm don't quote me on this, or tell me in the comments if I'm right or not. I'm pretty sure the Raiders tried to offer him a contract, and he's just like, I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to go get in this other system with KOC and his homies, and I want to learn. And if I do really good in practice, he'll go talk to someone else off this coaching tree, and I have a shot at a job. So,
I mean, the only thing I could even think of, the only thing I could even think of here, like looking through, is one of those bad teams that doesn't get a rookie up early in the draft, or something like where the Rams, Matt Stafford retires, and they go and just throw a truckload of money at Sam Darnold. That's the only other thing. But no matter what, Jag, you're right. I think his value is going to stay pretty high in Dynasty.
Yep.
They're just going to franchise tag him. They're going to tag him. They're going to tag him. They're going to run him back as the starter next year. J.J. McCarthy's coming off an entirely missed season with a significant knee injury. You can put the tag on Sam Darnold. You can run it back next year. That opens up the possibility. You can tag him the next year and trade him. If that does, you've got 2 years of great tape potentially then in that situation. And you talk about a team in the open market paying for him. That's not the ideal outcome for the Vikings, to have somebody to kind of rehab this guy for a year, and then somebody in the open market goes out and pays him. You tag him and you trade him like a franchise quarterback, or you decide he really is our franchise quarterback and you trade JJ McCarthy. And I think that people aren't really exploring that possibility either. JJ McCarthy could be traded. If Sam Darnold goes out and wins the Super Bowl for the Minnesota Vikings, then they're not going to tag him. They're going to give the guy a contract, and they could be exploring JJ McCarthy trades. And I think that that's the thing that people aren't factoring in, that if you were to put JJ McCarthy into this rookie class, Jag, I'm curious, you've been hitting the rookies harder than I have been. If you put JJ McCarthy into this class with Shadir Sanders and Cam Ward, who's quarterback one?
It's still Sanders to me. It's like, and it comes down to snaps, man. It's snaps. I've seen so many snaps of Sanders where I just feel way more confident of who he is in a player than a lot of these scouts talking about JJ McCarthy's third down completion percentage. It's all down to, and we even have data now that backs that. More and more, I was talking crap about Bill Parcells and how his method was ancient. Turns out that old dude's probably right. You'd rather have someone who's seen a lot of defenses, who's played maybe 1 or 2 or 3 systems in college, because you have so many coaches moving around. I would rather have them. I'd rather have Cam Ward. JJ McCarthy, just doesn't have tape. I'm just sorry, guys. He doesn't have tape.
Yeah.
He could be Anthony Richardson, realistically. I'm not joking.
And I respect that. I get that. But what I'm saying here is you've got the Vikings that are 14-2 going for the number 1 seed in the NFC. And they're not going to just let Sam Darnold walk and just throw it to a rookie that hasn't played at all, that missed entire season because of injury. I think Darnold's going to be back. I think he's going to be back on the tag is my expectation. And the only thing that changes that is if he does go out and wins the Super Bowl and they do decide to pay him.
Yep. Yeah, I say go out and get him right now, guys, because, I mean, he's incredibly affordable right now, especially if you look at what happened to Baker Mayfield, because I feel like he's Baker Mayfield right now, where even me, I bought Baker Mayfield, and I'm like, well, now I'm stuck with him, and then now I'm like, well, wow, now I'm stuck with him, you know, and I think that's where he's at. So that's 9 players that you guys should buy as soon as those trades open up. We're going to have Alfredo back to talk about sells, and we're going to talk about our usual rookies. And we're not going to have trade shows anymore. You guys have wound down, and you guys do. We haven't talked you into doing trades year round yet. We'll make that the norm. But until then, as always, I'm Jagger May. That's Jeff Bell. That's Alfredo Brown. We love you, and we will see you on the next one.